start by saying welcome to everybody. If I just introduce myself, so I'm Mark Adams. I'm operational team manager with the long-term neurological conditions teams, and I'm involved in peer inspection. I was asked by the scheduled and planned care quadrant to lead some work on developing peer inspections for our quadrant teams. And so I approached Julie Walton to give me some help with that, and hence we were asked to do this presentation today. So Julie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, good morning everybody. My name's Julie Walton. I'm the head of care standards, and I have to say I was absolutely delighted when Mark and the rest approached me to look at doing a peer review of the services, because it was such a positive and proactive thing for them want to do. Take us a clear look at what their services held and what they could learn on what was really working well and what perhaps we could improve on together. So yes, I think it's very exciting to be asked to do this.
Actually, I'll just start by just giving you all a bit of an overview about how we are planning to use this time. So we're going to just get things started after we've done maybe a little bit more of an introduction, is to run through a CQC quiz for you all. Just a bit of fun. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. And then move on to do some workshop activities. So the plan is that hopefully Ailish is going to help to organise for us to be able to go into 2 separate rooms, and in those 2 rooms, in 2 groups, we just want you to do look at doing 2 pieces of work, which we will explain to you a little bit more detail at the time. Some opportunity to come back together as a group and have some time to feedback on what happened within those 2 rooms. And then Julie's going to do a presentation around preparing for inspections and the use of self-assessment tools. And then we've got a final workshop activity and with the opportunity to ask some questions at the end. So those are our plans. Now, Julie, before we start in the present to do the quiz, is there anything that you wanted to say a little bit about what we're hoping people might get out of the workshop today?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely fair to say that this subject you could go for a whole week and really look at this and beyond, and people do qualifications in this sort of thing. And so for us to be able to do this in an hour is really a whistle-stop tour very, very quickly. And we did think about how could we do this, and we went through various degrees of, or could we give you lots of tools and templates and, you know, run through it, and then or should we look through how we're actually doing the peer review and kicking that off across the trust. But actually we've only got an hour, and so what we decided was the very best thing that we could do within that hour was to just give you a taste of it, get you to start thinking for yourselves about how you can best use self-assessment, how peer review can be a helpful tool to you, and what the elements of that looks like, and how that is extremely similar to a CQC inspection. In fact, it's very similar to the sorts of methodology any external regulator and accreditation process does. So we, in a nutshell, we ended up from going to loads and loads of things to tell you to actually let's just look at it and hopefully get you starting to think about it for yourselves and reflect on your own practice and what maybe you'll be able to take away, and then just start thinking about it, taking it forward, and see the relevance to your present day practice and work. So I hope that is what you will take away with you today. And sorry, in an hour we can only cover so much.
Thank you, Julie. And then in terms of why we look to starting the whole peer inspection process within schedule and planned care, I think one of the main reasons was to try and demystify inspections. Quite a lot of the teams within that quadrant haven't been included within the inspection process, so haven't experienced it. And quite understandably, there's quite a lot of anxiety around for staff around, the possibility of being inspected. And so in addition to sort of demystifying and trying to reduce people's anxieties about being inspected, we also wanted to look at stimulating quality improvement work and having peer inspections, so getting the kind of the observations of your peers and also service users that are and carers that are involved in the peer inspection process, using those observations to help staff to identify pieces of quality improvement work which they felt were important to carry out within their teams. Okay, so having done said, let's move on to the quiz. So we've got 10 questions, multiple choice questions, which we're going to run through with you. So if you make your own notes for yourself about what answers you give to each question, and then when we've gone through the questions, we'll give the answers and you can see how you've done. I have to admit that Julie set this quiz and I managed not to get 100% what I got, but I didn't get 100%, that's for sure. Okay, so question number 1, as you can see, so the CQC asks 5 questions when they inspect. Which one of the below is not one of the questions? So just give yourself a few seconds to think about that. Okay, question number 2. What is not a CQC rating category? And their options: inadequate, tremendous, outstanding, requires improvement, or good. Give you a few seconds to choose your answer. Okay. Question number 3. Which of these statements are true? So A, the accreditation process assesses against national standards for best practice. The CQC inspects against standards to check whether regulations are being met. And or B, there is no difference between an accreditation process and a CQC inspection. I'll give you a few seconds to decide which of those 2 answers you're going for. Okay, question 4. Which of these are not powers held by a CQC inspector? So A, power of entry. B, power to search. C, power of arrest. D, power to take away evidence. And E, power to interview a person in private. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds on which one you're going for. Okay, question 5. So the CQC publish an annual report each year that details how services are performed on meeting regulations and standards, problems encountered, and what should be focused on for the next year. What is this report called? So A, the State of Care Report. B, the State of Health and Social Care Services Report. C, the Health Secretary's State of Care Report. D, the Performance of Providers Against National Standards Report. Or E, Health and Social Care Monitoring and Outcomes Report. And I'll give you a few seconds to think about that one. Okay, question 6. So in 2019-20, the CQC found more poor care in inpatient wards for people with a learning disability and or autism, with a rise in the number of services rated as inadequate. What is the percentage rise in inadequate ratings? From 2 to 10%, 22 to 25%, 14 to 13%, 17 to 45%, or 1% to 23%. I'll give you a few seconds to think that through and plonk for an answer. Okay. Question number 7. What is the term triangulation used to describe? A, the bringing together of various sources of evidence to support a finding or outcome. B, shaping materials into the form of a triangle. C, comparing one piece of evidence against one other. Or D, building a picture from what you see. Okay, give you a few seconds. Plump for one of those answers. Okay, question number 8. The CQC uses quantitative analysis for rating services and providers. How many services and providers were rated using this process in 2019 and 2020? A, 31,000. B, 400,000. C, 239. D, 22,000. Or E, 678. I'll give you a few seconds to mull over which one you're going for. Okay, number 9. What is the overall rating for our trust? A, requires improvement. B, good. C, inadequate. D, adequate. Or E, outstanding. Okay, give you a second or two on that. Okay, last question, number 10. As a registered provider of services whose responsibility it is to meet the fundamental standards to comply with regulations. Answer A, all of us, as we have a part to play. B, staff working in clinical services only. C, the executive team. D, the board. Or E, the clinical commissioning group. So I'll just say again, as a registered provider of services whose responsibility is it to meet the fundamental standards to comply with regulations? So plump for one of those answers. Okay, so we'll run through the answers with you now and see how you got on. So, question number 1. The answer was, is it efficient? Oops, gonna go backwards. So, question number 2, what is not a CQC rating category? It's tremendous. Question number 3, which of these statements are true? And so the answer was the accreditation process assesses against national standards for best practice. The CQC inspects against standards to check whether regulations are being met. Question number 4, which of these are not powers held by a CQ inspector? Power of arrest. Question number 5, the CQC published an annual report. What is this report called? The answer is the State of Care Report. Now, Julie, you put 2 answers for this. What is the percentage rise in adequate ratings? Was it both answers correct, or was it which one of those was it?
No, it's just me being an idiot. It's 4 to 13%.
Great.
Sorry.
So the answer is all right, 4 to 13%. Question 7, what is the term triangulation used to describe? And the answer is bringing together various sources of evidence to support a finding or outcome. And then number 8 is, it's on this slide, it's just slightly out of place. So how many service providers were rated using analytics in 2019-20? The answer is 31,000. And then question number 9, what is the overall rating for our trust? It's inadequate. And final question, as a registered provider of services whose responsibility it is to meet the fundamental standards to comply with regulations, the answer is all of us, as we have a part to play. So I hope you enjoyed doing that, and you don't need to share your results with any of us. Okay, so Julie, could I hand over to yourself if you want to just introduce this activity, and then if Ailish, if you could help to sort out the rooms and then explain to people how we're going to move into rooms, that would be great.
Yeah, I'm going to set them up and then pop them in the chat once you've explained them.
Okay.
If we'd have had longer, obviously we'd have had more breakout rooms and more exercises. Oh, and by the way, apologies for the typo on the quiz. Need to go back,
Yeah,
Mark.
going back.
It's the enthusiasm. Yeah, so we've got a breakout room. I'm going to split you into 2 groups for about 10 minutes per question. There's 2 questions, and it is a sort of the flip side of each. So you've got discuss what you would consider is good practice, particularly in examples you would consider outstanding in your area, and you may well do that. That would be really fab. And for each of those examples of good practice, I want you to not just name them and sort of give them as an example, but how do you know it's good practice, and how would you demonstrate this? So if you were a peer reviewer or a CQC inspector coming to your service or your team or your area, how do you think it would be obvious to them? What is the evidence that they would see to recognise it? Where would they get that information from? And secondly, the second question is very similar, is discuss the challenges you have in your area or your team or service. And for those, it's looking at those challenges and concerns. So look at 2 or 3 examples. What are they? And what sort of evidence, again, similar to the previous question, is what sort of evidence is there that would highlight how these would appear to a peer reviewer? So would you expect these concerns to be obvious? Where would you see that the evidence or where that information would come through to alert an inspector or a peer reviewer? And most importantly, really, is for you to have a reflection and think about how would you show what you've already done to combat those challenges. So rather than just say, oh, we've got this, that, and the other, it's very much about we've already started doing, if that's the case, we've already started doing this, or we've made changes to that, however, etc. So if you could go to the 2 breakout rooms and amongst yourselves work your way through those 2 questions and those elements of those questions, and then we'll come back and have feedback.
And then just timing wise, we've just said what that whole exercise should take 20 minutes, shouldn't it? It's 10 minutes on each question.
Yeah. So just 2 or 3 examples, because I mean, it'd be marvellous if you could come with hundreds of good practice, but just 2 or 3 examples in the short space of time would be great. Thank you.
So over to you, Ailish. How are you going to get us into rooms?
So in the chat, if you open up the chat bit, what I've done is I've set up, it's actually 2 different meetings because Teams doesn't allow us to do one within this meeting we're currently in. So there's the breakout room 1, and then there's the link. So you'll have to come out of this one, join that one. And then there's breakout 2, there's a different link. And then I can put on the link again for, well, people will have the link to this one to get back. Or when we're in the breakout rooms, if people need it, I can put it in there if that would be helpful, if that makes sense.
Okay, and so do you need us to tell people which breakout room they're going to go into, or?
Probably. It might just be a case of just splitting people.
Julie, could you do that? Just because at the moment, all I can see is the presentation on my screen. I'm struggling to get back to the Microsoft Teams screen. So would you be able to just pick, are you able to look on who's in on the session and just tell them which room to go to?
Yes. I'll try and mix people up. So Gurkha, Joe Hemmingfield, and I'm sorry if I say this incorrectly, Pima, Sherpa, if you could go into breakout room 1 with Mark, and everybody else, if you could join me. Oh, and Anita, if she is able to join us, and Charlotte. So if Anita can go into breakout 1, and Charlotte, if you're able to join us, if you could go into breakout 2 with the rest that weren't named. Okay.
And are we coming back out to the breakout rooms about, is it 10 past?
About 10 past, yeah.
About 10 past 10. Yeah.
Okay, so at 10 past 10, we come back to, is it clear to everyone? So you've got, in the chat, you've got the room that you've been allocated. Just click on the new link and you'll join a new team. And then at 10 past, we'll be coming back to this meeting here. And I can provide the links, maybe in the chats of the breakouts, to make that clearer. If it's not clear, just shout up, anybody.
That's clear to me, Ailish.
Okay.
Then Mark, you're 1 and I'm 2, yeah?
Great, yeah, I'll come out of the presentation now. So yeah, I'll go into 1.
Thank you. Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
we did it. We're back in.
Hi everyone, I think we're just waiting for everybody to get back. I hope, unless I've gone and inadvertently dialed into the group too.
You're on mute, Joe.
Haven't really got anything to say, but I'll take myself off then.
So we're just waiting for everybody else to get back. How did you find that session? Oh, obviously we ran out of time. I think we were inevitably going to run out of time, to be absolutely honest, because there's such a lot to think about, isn't there, really? But at least that's what it's about, just to get you starting to think in a slightly different way.
I really appreciated it, actually. Thank you. Yeah, thought it was a really helpful thing to think about, and yeah, just to think about kind of when I'm being effective, I guess. And I do have that in mind a lot, but just to take a bit of a moment. And I usually think about it by myself rather than with other people as well. But to sort of think, what is my impact? Am I making a difference essentially, or not? And if I, what makes that go well? What maybe stands in the way? So yeah, I appreciated that.
Joe, it's important though to be kind to yourself in terms of your impact as well, because for me, if you'd asked, have I had the impact that I wanted when I started this job, I'd say no. But what I've become more appreciative of the challenging conditions that we're working within, and that the impact I have isn't purely down to me. It's down to teams having time to have these important conversations, and the headspace to take things forward. So the one thing I've learned in this job is the importance of perseverance and resilience, because I probably didn't appreciate how much I'd need with this. But just picking up on that was a really useful conversation, but it's probably reflective of the wider organisation that we don't always have time for these meaningful conversations about whatever it is, and it's these conversations which help us to move forward, but they don't happen frequently enough, I don't think.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, I see you with us.
You're on mute, Mark.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, I didn't. Oh, sorry, wrong Mark. I'll back out.
No, yeah, because I think another Mark. Sorry, you're just up as guest on ours, but I think you dialed in whilst we were in breakout sessions, didn't you? So perhaps came to an empty room.
Oh.
Thank you for coming back.
Yes, thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Yeah, I'm Mark Guest, and I'm service user, and I joined about 10 o'clock, and no one was speaking, and it was an empty room, and I went.
Oh, sorry about that.
Kept messing about with my phone over and over again, wondering what was going on.
Well, you're very welcome to join us.
Thanks. All a bit strange, obviously, just coming in at this point. I've obviously missed everything that you were discussing, so I'm not really sure whether I should continue.
Well, just to update you, Mark, what we've just been talking about, we just looked at sort of two things. One is about good practice, and people were having a think about what they would give examples of their own good practice or team practice or service, and it's all right be proud of something, but how do you know it's good practice? What is that sort of thing that's happening that's making you think, yeah, I'm pretty proud of this? And then it was also looking at, well, how would you demonstrate that to others? You might know that, but is it clear? Can you evidence it? Can you show it? How would others learn from it? And having looked at it, how would you work out what would be the next steps from it? And the same conversely was looking at, okay, so we've looked at what's good practice and reflected on that, but what about our challenges? Because we all face challenges in life, don't we? And at work and out in the world. And what is it, you know, we were looking at particular 1 or 2 challenges. Unfortunately for our breakout room, we ran out of time because we could have carried on talking about it. But it was very much about reflecting on what those challenges are and what have we done so far, thinking about it. So that was basically what the breakout rooms were about. So welcome, thank you for persevering with us.
Can I give some very brief feedback on the other breakout room and what we talked about? I will be very brief because I think we are tight on time. So we all talked about something that we're proud of was about kind of communication and a lack of hierarchy and approachability within our teams. And we had quite a good conversation about how to evidence that. So there was kind of felt like that if an inspector could shadow, they would see the opportunities that staff have to be able to support each other, looking into the minutes of governance meetings, referral meetings, etc., where there would be evidence of where people had the opportunity to raise issues and approach the rest of their team to get some sort of work together to try to manage some of those issues that were coming up. And then in terms of things that perhaps could be better, we talked about audits on wards and the impact that audits have on staff, and talked about the introduction of governance officers and the role of those governance officers in trying to start to tackle some of the issues that kind of the audit, internal audit processes bring up in terms of staff, the impact of those audits on staff well-being. So those sorts of things that we started to have those conversations and how we would evidence that and how would an inspector see that. So they were good conversations.
Yeah, thanks. Can I just jump in? I'm with the Stronger Together group at EIS, and I think evidencing, looking at service user groups as well is obviously would be a helpful thing. And I know, Mark, you've been to a Stronger Together meeting, and you have a very well-developed service user group.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Thanks for the feedback.
No, thank you, Mark. Okay, Julie, in terms of where we're at, do you want me to put the presentation back up? And there was a bit that you were going to do now, wasn't there, in terms of self-assessment tools? So let's see how I get on with the technology.
It's not a very technical slide, I can promise you.
No, I'm talking about the technology of me producing the slide. How's that? Now, there we go.
I'm glad you're the one that's doing all the practical bits. So that's breakout rooms.
Okay, we're nearly there. Bear with. Hey, hopefully you can see that now.
Yeah.
Tell me if I need to move on.
That's it. Yes, this is the one.
Yep.
Right. So this one's entitled self-assessment, and one of the things that I think would be really helpful from today is for everybody who's taking part is to start to think about how they can look around them and use all the sources of information that they have to hand to really start to reflect on how things are going, how, you know, direction of travel, where there might be shortfalls. Actually, I'm really proud of this. We can do more of that. So this is just a very simple slide, really, just to tell you about your own practices of self-assessment, because basically, if you look at peer inspection, if you look at CQC and other regulators that come in, they all use very, very similar things, because you can't reinvent evidence. You can't, and I don't mean that's sort of like falsify it, but you can't change. If someone's spoken to you, they've spoken to you. If you've looked at a document, you've looked at a document. If you've walked into a room and there's peeling paint on the walls, that's what you've seen. So basically that is the sources of intelligence and information. And then obviously, if you're looking at paperwork as a source of evidence, there's all sorts of things. So we just break it down into 3 elements. And this is common to every kind of self-assessment, peer review, CQC inspection, health and safety, executive inspections, etc. So you look at it from, and if you use that, you can do it for yourself. There is nothing, I believe, apart from stuff that's completely out of our reach, which is sort of talking to people that we don't have access to. But there is very, very little other people can do from a regulatory peer inspection review that we can't do for ourselves, because we have the information and the tools at our disposal. So we could be doing this for ourselves to inform and improve our own practice. So what is the information we hold about our services? Ask that question. What is it that your service, about the group that you're chairing or the group that you're involved in, or anything, activity that you're thinking about doing? What is the information you know about it, and what's the range of sources? So it could be anything from performance data, it could be statistics on staff mandatory training, it could be what's coming out of incident reporting, it could be staff meeting, service user meeting minutes. And what is it saying? You know, what is it telling us? Is there any themes? Is there any trends coming out of that? And you pluck out the bits that sort of make you curious as to, oh, actually that stands out. And another source, which is they're very obvious, these tools, is staff feedback. I mean, we have very formal mechanisms in the NHS around national staff surveys. So of course you've got a set of questions and you've got answers to that the staff are saying. But there's all sorts of feedback coming from staff. Staff share things at supervision, they share things at staff meetings, they share their thoughts and views as part of their daily practice. They'll raise concerns, they might go to a Freedom to Speak Up Guardian. There's a whole range of ways of understanding what the experience is of people who is actually delivering services. And it's the same for service users. Now, Mark, what you missed in our group, breakout group earlier, was a very, very keen emphasis on how we can improve and get more involvement from service users, people with lived experiences. And at the end of the day, we're all here for one thing. We're all here to make it the very best possible experience and outcome for people who use our services, and also people who work alongside us and with us. So it is those 3 things. And when we look at that quiz question about what is triangulation, this is a fundamental process that doesn't matter whether you do it for yourself or whether you have somebody from the next team come in and have a look, or whether you have an external regulator like CQC come and have a look. It is very much, what do we know about ourselves? What's the intelligence telling us? What's the website saying? What's the newsletters saying? All these sources of paper, documentary evidence. What are people that I work with, colleagues, partners outside the trust, what are they saying to us? And most importantly, what are the people that's experienced our services? What are they saying to us? And then we use that to look at themes and trends. So basically, everything you need is within your grasp. You just need to sit back and reflect which bits is relevant to you. On the intranet, on the Care Standards intranet, it has all sorts of links to the CQC's website, and there's guides, there's self-assessment prompts, and they're all bespoke to different services. These are very clinical focused, but the principles are the same. And obviously, if there's any help from the Care Standards team, we are always there to help you if you want to explore this further. So have we got any questions about that?
People.
Yeah, I've
Joe,
got a question.
Joe's got a question. Yeah, hi Joe.
Hi. Yeah, I think I feel like, and I don't really see like the whole big picture in the trust. I mean, I think coming along to some of the QI things is sort of a little bit of an opportunity for me to inform myself a little bit better. But I've you know, knowing sort of some of the conversations that happen nationally and in, you know, on Twitter and in different areas, I feel like in terms of properly understanding what we mean when we say things like, you know, oh, somebody is struggling with their mental health, for example, and understanding the reasons for that, what that means to that person and what can actually help. I feel like if you compared that to something like if you broke your leg and why that happened and what's happened and what might help, I feel like there's like that we don't really have, that there are probably different stories about that, and that there's a lot of uncertainty about, you know, kind of actually what it means. And so in terms of like best standards and best practice, because I feel there are different stories and there is debate, and there's not really one single understanding of that. And I don't feel really as a trust we're kind of telling one story about what it means to really help somebody in that way, you know, what it is that the trust does in order to really help people. I think that makes it a bit difficult, really. That, you know, the kind of idea about what quality means, then what does high quality mean? There's something about, you know, I mean, you could sort of say, well, it's a bit of a journey where we know some things about what causes, you know, people's mental health problems, what the sorts of things that will help it, for example, you know. But I just don't feel we're kind of really articulating that all together, or even like the tensions about that. And I think that makes it difficult for us to assess our own work. Yeah, because it feels like there's like a gaping hole in the middle. But what I'm hoping is, as I learn a little bit more about the Back to Good work, that I might get a sense of what we collectively understand good to be and where we collectively think we all are in relation to that. So yeah, that's something I'm interested in.
Thank you, Jo. I see Lee's wanting to come in. I don't know whether that's in response to what Jo said or it's a new point, but Lee, please join us.
I was just going to pick up on Jo's point. I agree completely, in the sense that quality and good outcomes are very different for every individual. And I think sometimes it's very difficult to measure whether we're achieving a good outcome, because that outcome can vary by person to person. I suppose what I'm mindful of is we do know what will lead to good outcomes on the whole, and it's about measuring that those are happening effectively. So for instance, we know that whilst the outcome for each individual will be different, involving them in their care will lead to a better outcome, and making sure that we're doing that for everybody in a meaningful way. And that can be setting goals, collaborative care plan and everything else. It can be on the inpatient wards, having the service user attending their MDT discussion. It can be them having a formulation review on admission to understand the purpose of admission and what their journey when they're on an inpatient ward needs to be. So they're not necessarily outcomes, but they're crucial things to make sure we achieve the outcome that's right for that person. And it's about measuring those things, I think.
Thanks, Lee. I mean, I don't know whether one of the things that I'm hearing is that whether part of this is people's concerns about an inspection process and the reliance, feeling that there is a reliance on that inspection process on quantitative measurement and insufficient value on people's personal experiences. I don't know whether is that partially what we're saying, is a concern about that reliance on quantitative data to inform inspection outcomes. I don't know, Julie, what do you is that, you know, from an inspection perspective, is there how heavy a reliance is there on quantitative information and not the qualitative side of people's personal experiences of receiving the service or delivering the service?
Yeah, the quantitative stuff basically sets the scene, and from a CQC perspective, it sets the scene on where they want to, you know, what the baseline facts are and where they'd like to concentrate on. But the CQC particularly have a real onus on people's experience, and they are still improving on that. But it is a major input into what they do, and they are working all the time to improve. So by being able to evidence our own working with service users and involving and hopefully seeing that improve and increase over the future months, that is the sort of evidence that would be really helpful for the trust. But obviously CQC would be really interested in that, but we have to make sure that that happens because it's really what the service users experience that we need to be able to tap into.
And I guess we're working in services, particularly where the outcomes from our services, as people have been saying, are very personal. You know, that it's not always easy to define what the outcome should be, because that is very much a personal experience, and people get out of the services what they need to get out of them, and it's difficult for us to be able to dictate what that ought to be. I think that's what I'm hearing from the discussion. Was there any other question? I'm just looking at time, and I think time is against us, Julian. I think we've completely blown our time scale. But I think the conversations we were having were really valuable, so I thought it was worth not jumping in and sticking to our initial plan.
For me, the real aim of this session is for people to start to reflect and take away thoughts on what they might want to be able to do for themselves in a slightly different way. So I hope that's what people will be taking away with them, and hopefully they'll have one or two actions they specifically want to do once this is over.
So should we just leave it if there's any other questions? But if there aren't any other questions, should we look at finishing the session at that, Julie?
Unless anybody else has anything else they want to add before we go.
I can't see any hands waving, so I'm assuming that people have had the opportunity. I guess if people did have any questions, they could contact myself or Julie after the session. Please. If anything comes to mind, or there was anything they didn't feel that they wanted to share as part of the session, the workshop session. So I will just say thank you very much for everybody that's joined us this morning. I hope that you've been able to get something out of the hour that we spent together, and enjoy whatever other sessions within the quality improvement week that you've signed up for. Okay, so take care, everybody.
Thanks, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.